What is going on, everybody? We are back at the shop, and today we're going to go over our filtration system and some of the updates that we have done to that to get us to crystal clear water. It's something I think is super important for a lot of shops to look into, especially when you are trying to create a better, greener environment and kind of look after the stuff that you're doing. But one of the first things we're going to do is switch out our power washer handle. We've been using a standard wand. We're gonna check this one out. It's a shorter one that I picked up on Amazon. See if that's easier for the guys when they are reclaiming. That way they can be closer to the screens, a little more detailed, and we will go from there. So we have just a standard washout booth, and then where our filtration comes in, we run a down pipe into a 110 mesh screen. We are actually using the filter pads from the roll that you can get from CCI. So we cut out a sheet that fits into here. That way, once a week, we can remove this and you still have a clean screen below. We do also have a second one that we can swap out. The next step of this, the water goes into this smaller bucket, which we have holes drilled along the edge so that that will catch a lot of the solids, but you can see the filter pad does a lot to capture most of it, so the water is already starting to be clear. Then it goes into the second larger container, and you can see right here in the back, let me get back here, we have a T in there so that the water is actually coming from below here and up and then out. And so the reason behind that is we don't want water flowing down into the top, or else it would be skimming the solids off the surface. So we just drilled a hole and put one of these gaskets on the back, and then we ran this into PVC pipe, which then will go around this way. Then it drains into our filtration system. And so putting all these steps before it gets to the filtration system, where we just use shop towels, and we can change that out every day, depending on how dirty it gets. We have our water draining out onto here. It'll grab even more of the solids. Then it goes into these two settling tanks. So it goes to the first one, fills up, overflows, and then it is pushed through two filters, and it goes into this hose, up this pipe, and then from that pipe it drops into this ICB tote that we have. And so basically this is our larger settling tank, and you can see some of the solids at the top. And what we have been using is a product called Clear Water from CCI. So I will go ahead and show you that process. So once the solids are extracted, you can see, quick sample here, just how clear the water is. You can see the complete separation of your emulsion from the water itself, making it super easy to dispose of, and then you can dry out your solids and dispose of those properly as well. Here is the clear water flocking powder from CCI that we're using. It's recommended that you use roughly 3 pounds of this per 100 gallons. So I believe our tanks are about 250, so we usually use around 6 to 7 pounds. These bags are 55-pound bags, so we will just use those and we pour it in the top. And what this does is it will mix with the water and cause the small particles to cling to the flocking powder, which is basically a bentonite clay with some other stuff mixed in there. So we do that, and I will show you guys that step, and then everything will settle, and then we can go ahead and pump it out. And so to mix this, we use our drill with a larger paddle bit. So we will take this. This is very fine powder, so you will want to wear a dust mask so you're not breathing any of that in, just because it is super small particles. But once we pour that in the water and get it mixing, it quickly starts to grab all the different particles and create solids, and causing everything to drop out. See up here, because we don't drain the tank completely each time, there is always some of that flocking powder in here. So that does start to cause everything to bunch up, but what I'll do before we start pouring it in is getting everything to start moving around, and that way everything is suspended in the water and we can help activate and cause things to basically clump together, and that's how we are able to clear the water. All right, so now that we have got it mixed up a little bit, I'm gonna pour some of this in here. Usually I will run the drill while pouring this in, but because I'm doing this one-handed, we're just gonna pour some in and drill a little bit, and then continue that until the container is empty, but I do like to keep it mixing. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that real quick, and we'll be right back. This is just within the first few minutes, and you can already see how much of it is starting to clump together. And so you want it to be that thick, chunky, and it'll actually separate to the top, and you can see how clear the water is already getting. So it's even taking out the dye and everything in this water. So it's really good way to separate even the things you think have been filtered out will actually all bunch together and be super easy to take care of. So we're just gonna mix this for about 5 minutes and then let it set, and it'll completely separate. All right, so you can see just after, I would say 5 minutes of mixing, you already have a very, very thick layer on the top of this where everything has kind of grouped up. And now what we'll be able to do is skim off the top where we can then separate the solids, and then we'll drain this tank almost to the bottom, probably till right about here. And that way we have still a base layer in there of heavier solids that can drop to the bottom, and we'll clean that out about every 6 months. But we only have to do this once a week, and we can actually probably get away with doing it less if we change where the water discharges when we're simply degreasing and stuff, have a separate drain for that, so that that clear water is not filling this tank. But this does help, and so I'll just give you a quick example of how thick this is, and you can see how clear that water is underneath. But so this is the stuff that, even though it had already ran through filters and everything and looked fine, this was it before, this is what we were able to take out of that water. So you'll see once we scoop everything off of here, we'll go ahead and put that into our buckets, where then we can let that dry out and become a solid. This water below is going to be crystal clear. So here is a quick before and after. As you can see, we have removed many of the solids down to about 20 microns before, and we actually had this water tested and approved as drain safe for where we are located, but we still wanted to step it up a notch, and now we are here. So we are almost crystal clear. We've removed any of the solids down to very small. There are probably a few more steps we are going to take on top of this. So it's a little bit of a mess right here. We are going to eventually maybe do a second stage where we can keep all the solids here and skim off the top. That way we are just filling a container with clear water afterwards. But we're just gonna go ahead and drain this tank now. You can see there's still a little bit more on top that we will scoop out, but this bucket is now full, and it's very light. It's not super dense, but you can see this whole bucket is now full of solids. So we are now able to let that dry, and we can discard that properly. But yeah, so this is our little setup, and it's only going to continue to improve, and every time we make adjustments to that, we will go ahead and share so that you guys can do the same with yours. So currently we're just using a Ryobi transfer pump. We run this in the tank just below the water level, and then we have it go into our washout sink, where we also have a 110 mesh screen, and that will catch any other solids that may come through the hose. So compared to the water previously, you can see we are now discharging crystal clear water with one last pass through a 110 mesh, ensuring that we are sending clean, safe water down the drain and doing our part to make sure we clean up after ourselves. Alright, so if you look in there, you can see it is actually crystal clear, and there is some sediment at the bottom. We'll actually go ahead and leave all of that in there because it does still have that clay mixture in the stuff that's at the bottom. So the next time, in about a week or two, when this fills back up, we'll be able to re-agitate that, and that'll help allow us to not have to use as much product to get all of this to clump together. And we'll go ahead and drain it again, and then usually about once a month or so we will go ahead and scrape out some of the extra on the bottom. But as you can see, we got ourselves a full bucket of emulsion and stuff like that all cleared out, so we are good to go for some more washout. So that's going to wrap up everything on our current setup for our filtration. We do expect to do a few more changes in the future and add a few more steps in there, stuff to make it run a little bit more smooth. But I do think it is definitely worth the investment to take the time and get the right materials and use everything to make sure that you are producing the cleanest wastewater possible, and definitely have it tested. We were able to do that. We reached directly out to our water company, sent them a sample. We do also take steps to make sure that all the chemicals and the degreasers that we are using are of the green line. So there are some soy-based stuff and other products that we are making sure to use instead of using some of the more harsh chemicals, which also, with having it diluted with so much water, is able to be drain safe where we are located. And I mean, the powder that we're using, it's about $200 every 50 pounds, but that's definitely a lot cheaper than the fees and fines and stuff that you would get if you did not check your water before running it down the drain, or if you were to cause a clog in a city drain, the building that you're renting, the building you own, or a septic system, and cause damage to the groundwater or the environment. So it's definitely worth taking the time and effort not only to control the quality of your prints, but also of your process. And so that's why it's important for us to take these extra steps. If there's any products that you guys are using that work better than this, or other ideas that you have on how we could improve, feel free to leave those comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.